Right now, in Baltimore Harbor, there's a bridge that collapsed in March 2024. 6 people died when a cargo ship hit it. 1 year later, they still haven't torn down the broken bridge. The twisted wreckage still sits there, not because of money, not because of complexity, because of process, environmental reviews, historical preservation studies, permits, the list goes on. But China? They can construct a functional bridge carrying active traffic in 43 hours. They prefabricated this entire 1,300-ton bridge off-site, demolished the old structure, slid the new bridge into place with mechanical pulleys. Done. Traffic resumed Monday morning. But in America, we can't remove a collapsed bridge with zero traffic in 365 days. This isn't. Every empire swears it can still build. Every government insists its systems still work. And every time, they're right. Until suddenly, they're not. Rome built the aqueducts, then forgot how to repair them. The Soviets industrialized a continent, then couldn't manufacture soap. America built the interstate system, now can't remove a collapsed bridge in a year. But here's what makes Rome's collapse so instructive. They didn't forget how to build. They lost the capacity to actually do it. At its height, Rome was a building machine. 11 aqueducts bringing 300 million gallons of clean water daily into the city. The Aqua Claudia, 32 miles of elevated arches built in just 14 years under Emperor Claudius. For centuries, it worked flawlessly. Roman engineers knew how to build, maintain, and expand. But by the 5th century, something had changed. The aqueducts started failing. Not from age, poor maintenance, channels clogged, arches cracked, water pressure dropped. Rome still had people who knew how to fix it. Stone masons still existed. Labor was available. What they didn't have anymore was the organizational capacity to execute repairs. Why? The empire was fragmenting. The people who climbed the social ladder weren't engineers. They were administrators, lawyers, and Senate speechmakers managing a collapsing system. Every young Roman with ambition was told to attend rhetoric school, not engineering. When the Aqua Claudia needed repairs in the late 400s, the work barely happened. Nobody could organize the workforce, secure the funding, or maintain political stability long enough to finish. Then came the final blow. In 537 AD, during the Gothic siege, the invaders cut the aqueducts to starve Rome of water. After the siege ended, Rome never rebuilt them. The knowledge to repair them still existed. Stonemasons were still alive, but the capacity to mobilize thousands of workers, coordinate materials, and fund multi-year repairs was gone. And once you lose that capacity, you can't defend what you have, no matter how much wealth you've accumulated. Who survived Rome's collapse? Not the bureaucrats who'd mastered the Roman system. When the empire fell, the system fell with it. Suddenly, knowing how to navigate Roman bureaucracy was worth nothing. The people who survived had skills that traveled, craftsmen who could work anywhere, engineers who could build for whoever paid them, farmers who owned land that produced food no matter who was in charge. The bureaucrats discovered their expertise was trapped inside a dead system. The builders discovered their skills worked everywhere. Rome's collapse was slow, took centuries. But when you lose your ability to build, the collapse can happen much faster. The Soviet Union was a 20th century industrial powerhouse with nuclear weapons, space stations, and the world's largest military. But by the 1970s, they were drowning in what economists call value subtraction, where the inputs to production cost more than the outputs were worth. Factories existed to meet quotas on paper, not produce useful goods. The famous joke, "We pretend to work, they pretend to pay us." Why did this happen? Because the system rewarded paperwork over production. Managers who hit numerical targets got promoted, even if the products were unusable. Engineers who could actually build were subordinate to bureaucrats who could fill forms. Then came Chernobyl. April 26, 1986. A reactor at a Ukrainian power plant explodes, spewing radiation across Europe. The initial government response wasn't to mobilize engineers. It was to deny the disaster happened, evacuations were delayed, public warnings suppressed. Why? Because in a system drowning in bureaucracy, admitting catastrophic failure means someone takes the blame. And in the Soviet Union, taking blame could end your career or your life. So instead of immediate action, there were meetings, calls to Moscow, officials waiting for orders from officials waiting for orders. When they finally committed to building the sarcophagus, a massive steel shell to contain the radiation leaking from the reactor, 17 agencies had to coordinate, each protecting their territory. Design work began nearly a month after the explosion. Construction took 6 months. Total time, 206 days, from disaster to containment. And here's what that actually meant to people on the ground. Over 600,000 liquidators, soldiers, firefighters, miners, construction workers, sent into radiation zones that should have been evacuated. Thousands developed radiation sickness. Cancer rates exploded in the years that followed. Soviet engineers had the technical knowledge, but the system couldn't turn knowledge into action without layers of approval, committee reviews, and political calculations about who would take the fall. What can we learn? When systems collapse, it's ultimately everyday people who will pay the price, not the bureaucrats who built the paralysis. The pattern repeats in every century. Rome's administrators stayed comfortable while aqueducts failed. Soviet party officials lived hundreds of miles from Chernobyl's fallout, while local families breathed it. And right now, in America, the same gridlock is taking hold. Want to see what happens when this goes on long enough? Look at California. January 2025, wildfires destroyed over 11,000 homes across LA. Entire neighborhoods reduced to ash. Officials promised to cut red tape. They implemented AI permit reviews. They allowed architects to self-certify plans. They vowed this time would be different. 9 months later, out of nearly 2,000 rebuilding applications, only 405 permits approved. One architect who lost his home of 47 years describes the reality. The building department's answers change every day. Different inspectors give conflicting opinions. Each resubmission costs time and money. Families who thought they had good insurance discover the payouts won't cover rebuilding costs. They try for government loans, but loan officers get laid off mid-process. Applications get lost in the system. So they give up. One resident, it was too expensive and too difficult. She sold her lot and moved to Minnesota. Meanwhile, burned lot prices have collapsed by 30 to 45% as desperate families sell to corporate investors who can afford to wait out the bureaucracy. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers cleared 2.6 million tons of debris, more than the World Trade Center rubble. The lots are ready. Architects are ready. Construction crews are ready. What's missing? The ability to get from, yes, rebuild, to actual construction without drowning in paperwork. This is what it looks like when a society loses the capacity to build, even in emergencies, even when thousands of families are homeless. But it gets worse. When societies can't build, governments don't just fail quietly. They get desperate, and desperate governments become dangerous. But here's the twist. They don't fix the problem. They double down on what caused. By the late 1980s, when store shelves were empty across the Soviet Union, did they deregulate? No. They added more economic planning committees and paperwork requirements for factory managers, because admitting the system is broken means admitting they broke it. Here's what history shows us they'll try next. Tactic 1, they'll trap you in place. Soviet Union, 1932. Stalin introduced the propiska, an internal passport system. You couldn't move cities without government permission, couldn't change jobs, couldn't leave. Why? Because when the system was collapsing, the last thing they wanted was people escaping to somewhere that still worked. Millions were locked in failing regions, forced to watch their cities decay, unable to leave even as food disappeared and factories closed. Sound impossible in America? California's doing everything it can to keep you there. They've proposed exit taxes multiple times, bills that would chase your wealth for up to 10 years after you leave. AB 2088 in 2020, AB 259 in 2023. And if you earn California income after you leave, rental property, business income, they'll tax it forever, no matter where you live. They're not locking the doors yet, but they're trying to make it financially devastating if you ever try to leave. Tactic 2, they'll make compliance impossible, then punish you for failing. Soviet bureaucrats perfected this. Want to open a small business? You needed 47 permits from 8 different agencies that contradicted each other. It was designed to be impossible. The system was set up to audit you, find the inevitable violation, then keep you busy chasing after permits and approvals. The red tape wasn't incompetence, it was the design. Watch for this pattern. Regulations so complex that compliance requires hiring experts you can't afford. Agencies with contradictory requirements, so you're always in violation. Selective enforcement, they ignore violations until they want to destroy you. It takes 9 months to approve a permit for a family rebuilding after losing their home in a fire, but they can shut down your home project for a missing signature in 24 hours. The bureaucracy moves at lightning speed, but only in one direction. So here's your counter playbook to surviving a society that can't build. Use AAI as your bureaucracy translator. Soviet citizens had BLAT. Informal networks to navigate the system. You have ChatGPT. It can decode permit requirements, autofill compliance forms, translate bureaucratic double talk into English. The same AI you use to write emails can be weaponized to combat government red tape. build skills they can't regulate away. Soviet engineers could emigrate when the system collapsed. Their expertise worked anywhere. The administrators who'd spent careers mastering Soviet bureaucracy, worthless. Today, there are plumbers in America charging $150 per hour. Electricians can't keep up with demand. Meanwhile, mid-level compliance managers at failing companies are discovering their stakeholder coordination skills aren't worth much when there's nothing left to coordinate. When systems collapse, bureaucratic expertise dies with them. Physical skills travel. The lesson from history is brutal but clear. When societies stop building, governments don't fade away. They get vicious. They'll trap you, entangle you, and fight to maintain control. The people who survive see what's coming and prepare their escape before the doors lock. So here's your homework. What's one skill you're building that bureaucrats can't regulate away? Share it, but let's build a list of skills no government can touch. So where does that leave America? Rome drowned in bureaucracy. The Soviets imploded because their system rewarded paperwork over production. America is speedrunning the same pattern. We're at the stage where we can't even tear down a broken bridge in 1 year. The enemy isn't a competing power like China. It's that we've created a system where nothing can be built, and empires that can't build don't survive. The elites want you to believe this is all normal. That bureaucracy is just how modern society works, but history tells a different story. While everyone else wanders through the fog, a few people find the map. Subscribe. I'll keep drawing it.